5 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Thank you much for streaming in as we talk about the Eagles, what happened Saturday against the Cowboys, and now we start to look ahead to the Saints. We'll get into a little bit of that with our first guest today. That would be our pal Ed Kracz from Sports Illustrated, jumping in with us this morning. Ed, first thing first, holiday good for you? Sans the Eagles outcome?
Yeah, it's always I love the holiday season. So yeah, I had a good time. A lot of family time, which is what it's all about. And now counting down the days till another year has gone by. It's just amazing how quickly these years seem to fly by. But yeah, it was great. I hope everybody else had a good one too. I hope you guys did too, because mine was merry.
Most people don't have 13 and 2 years around the country if they're football fans, but the Eagles didn't get it done on Christmas Eve at Kracz. So
yeah, everybody's in a panic. Everybody's in a panic. The Eagles lost. You know, they lost their second game on Christmas Eve.
They lost with a backup quarterback.
That is,
and they still had a chance to win against a very good team on the road. By the way, their third straight road game, which when the schedule came out, I said, this looks awful from a spot standpoint. Yeah. And, you know, to me, it's not the game. Jody and I were talking about the 3rd and 30. I had a big problem with the call there, but it's not about the game as much as the injuries to Lane Johnson and Devonta Maddox and where they're going to be come playoff time. And the Eagles, Nick Sirianni says all the time, I'm not going to put a timetable on it, Ed Kracz, but you can kind of read between the lines. You know, they're hopeful with Lane is the terminology. Devonta's out indefinitely. What do those lines tell you about Lane Johnson and Devonta Maddox?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Lane, for some reason, the Eagles just don't play well with Lane not in the lineup. I think they are 3-11 in their last 14 games without him in the lineup, which is really kind of amazing when you think about it, because, you know, he's a right tackle. He's an offensive lineman. You wouldn't think that there would be that big of a difference the way the team plays, but that just shows you what he means to this team. And that's a huge loss. And, you know, Lane was on track to play every game this year for, I think, maybe the first time in his career, the first time in a very long time. And this one's going to hurt for sure. And unless Jack Driscoll, now that he's been kind of settled in as the right tackle, remember he relieved Jordan Mailata at left tackle. He went in for Johnson when he got hurt during another game at right tackle. So he kind of bounced back and forth, but I think he's gotten a lot of reps at right tackle. And that's the way I think they're going to go against the Saints on Sunday, is Jack Driscoll at right tackle. It's a shame that Andre Dillard can't be your swing tackle, but and I don't know why. I mean, he was an abject failure at right tackle when they put him in there, but that was 3 years ago when they did that. Yeah. So, you know, you've had 3 years to kind of get him cross-trained, but it seems like they're more interested in playing him at guard than as a backup right tackle. So it's going to be Driscoll, and that injury really hurts. And then if you look at Devonta Maddox, you know, the Eagles probably will get C.J. Johnson back, I would think, at some point. I don't know if it will be Sunday against his former team, but you have to think that.
By the way, this is a big day, Ed, because the Eagles can start his practice window. So it'll tell me if they don't start his practice window, that's a bad sign, don't you think?
Yeah, he probably won't play. And it's also a big day in that we're supposed to get the quarterback, right? The quarterback usually talks on Wednesday, and the Eagles didn't have one listed on the schedule because it is a very fluid situation. But if we don't get a quarterback to talk today, what are we to read into that? That Hurts isn't playing? If we get Minshew, we know Minshew's going to play. So, you know, it's a big day for that as well. But the Maddox injury, I don't think. I mean, yeah, he's a great slot corner. He did a very good job against Justin Jefferson. When everybody looks at the game CeeDee Lamb had against the Eagles couldn't take him out of the game, but they were able to take Justin Jefferson out of the game when they played the Vikings. I know that was back in week 2, but Maddox was a big part of that stop of Jefferson back in week 2. And his injury, you know, will be felt as well. But again, you have C.J. Johnson, who probably will come back at some point, right? I mean, the lacerated kidney, I don't know, you know, how you rehab that, just rest. but we'll see when that's happening. So the Eagles, to me, really do need a bye. They have to figure out a way to win one of these last 2 games so they have that extra week to heal, to rest. Jason Kelsey talked about this because they had the bye, I think, in week 8. He said, ask me after week 14 how my body feels. I mean, that's a long run of 9 straight games without a break. And I think we're seeing some of the effects of that now. So the Eagles desperately need this bye that they can get if they clinch this first round or this first number 1 seed.
Since there's a lot of reading between the lines that can be done today, what is the exact timing, you two beat guys, on the Eagles practice, media availability? When are we going to get some answers, even if they're not giving us direct answers, that we can read into about the availability of some players this weekend?
Well, Wednesday, later today, Nick is going to talk at 12:30, and then the locker room is supposed to be open, and usually they fit the quarterback in there somewhere. So between like 12:45 and 1:30 is usually on Wednesday when the quarterback is available to speak. So, we'll know early afternoon what the Eagles plan to do. Maybe they'll put the quarterback availability back to Thursday. That would be my guess, is what they'll do is they'll wait till Thursday. We cannot watch practice today. It's a walkthrough, so we won't be able to see who's playing right tackle, which quarterback's taking the reps, if CJ's out there. We won't be able to see any of that until tomorrow when practice is open. And that practice tomorrow on Thursday is, I think, 3:30. John, does that sound right?
Yeah. Locker room is 3:30-ish.
1:30 is practice.
Yeah, 1:30 is practice.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've scaled back to Wednesday walkthroughs. But the Eagles will announce when they start the practice window for CJ.
Right.
So we should know. That's a concern to me, just because the way Nick spoke about it earlier this week. He said that one's a little bit different when he was talking about injuries, because that's about CAT scans, I think he brought up, and things like that, and whether he's cleared. But that's a 21-day practice window. So I guess you can push it back when you think about the first round of the playoffs for the Eagles is most likely going to be January 21st or 22nd. That's the weekend. So you can push it back a week, I guess, and still be on track to get them back for the playoffs. But it would say something to me that it's a little bit more concerning if they didn't start his window today. That would concern, because they can just activate him when they activate him. And you would think they would want him to get as much practice in, because there's going to be some rust. He's been out for a significant period. So I think this is a big day for CJ Gardner-Johnson. If they don't activate that practice window, I don't think that's a good sign. Or am I reading too much into that, Ed?
Well, again, I don't know. A lacerated kidney. I mean, I saw CJ in the locker room last week.
It was his birthday. He seemed fine, but
but you don't know how a lacerated kidney affects anybody. He's supposed to be all hunched over or whatever. I don't know, but he looked okay. But that doesn't mean he can play. But I just don't know if it would be a concern or not. I mean, the goal is to have him for the playoffs, right? And you're going to have to find a way again to win one more game here, and it might have to be without CJ Johnson helping you do that. I think if he doesn't get activated today, I doubt they would do it on Thursday. I think it would have to be today, right? Like you said, you need to practice, you need to get ready. And
that's how they've done it with everybody else.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean they have to continue that way.
And if you guys get Jalen Hurts today, Jalen was trying to get you to believe that he was going to play this past week against the Cowboys. Yeah. And by the way, 24 hours after he was in front of you guys in microphones, the coach came out and said, yeah, he's not playing. So I don't know that we can get anything or read anything to what Jalen says today. I think that we're going to have to wait on that one. I don't know. Maybe the Eagles will just go straight up and tell people ahead of time. If it's not Jalen Hurts this week, if it's Gardner Minshew again, certainly he played well enough. He didn't play great, but he played well enough against the Cowboys this week. Here was one of the things that bothered me about Gardner, and it's been part of his game forever. Does it bother you that he throws off his back foot as much as he does? There are certain quarterbacks that can do that. One of them's named Aaron Rodgers, but he's got one of the best arms I've ever seen in the history of the National Football League. Gardner Minshew does not. Does that bother you when you're watching Kracz as often as he throws off his back foot?
Yeah, I didn't get swept up in the Minshew mania era when he was in Jacksonville, so I didn't really see Gardner Minshew play a lot of quarterback. I didn't know if that was just the way he plays the position or if his footwork was just a little bit off there because he hadn't really started a game until, it's been almost a year, I guess, since he started a game. But yeah, that to me is a concern. And yeah, he played well, but he was kind of just throwing it up there for Brown and Smith. I mean, he made some nice throws, but boy, those two receivers really bailed him out on some of those throws. But yeah, I think it is a concern that he throws it. But if that's the way he's comfortable doing it, then so be it. I mean, you're not going to change him now if that's the way he's been doing it, since his air raid days at Washington State with Mike Leach. But you would hope that if he has to play again, a second straight start will help him kind of make better decisions in some aspects. Maybe his footwork will be a little bit better because it will be a second straight start. I don't think he's had 2 straight starts in this league since maybe 2020 or so when he was in Jacksonville. So you would hope that he would be a little bit better if he has to go on Sunday.
Yeah, and he's playing at home. Obviously, that'll help.
True.
Yeah, I don't think he has the best mechanics in the world. To Jody's point, I remember talking to John DiFilippo when he was here, and I was interested. I said, well, point to who has good mechanics? And he, right off the top of his head, he said, Carson Palmer. Just watch Carson Palmer. So I did. I went back and I looked at Carson, and damn it, John was right. He's like, this guy is just, everything is locked in. You don't see that now. I mean, there's a bunch of guys. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. He's got terrible mechanics. I'm not comparing Gardner Minshew to Patrick Mahomes, but it's just a different, you bring up the air raid offense. They all have bad mechanics. It's just a different era. They do it a different way, at least what we think of conventional. So I don't know. But yeah, conventionally, he doesn't have great mechanics.
Dak's got pretty good mechanics, and they were on display against the Eagles this week.
Well, he's 24 for 24. Yeah, he's okay, but I wouldn't, again, what's the comp? If you watch Dak next to Carson Palmer, does he have good mechanics? I don't know. The game has kind of shifted from that traditional, you got to do it this way, you got to do it that way. And we have all these different arm angles. You bring up Aaron Rodgers, Jody. He doesn't have great mechanics conventionally, but that's the best guy I've ever seen play the position. I say it all the time. Patrick Mahomes right now, he's throwing no-look passes like he's a basketball player. I mean, old school coaches would have strangled him for doing that. So it's a little bit different. But, Carson Wentz, we went through that. His mechanics were bad. Then they went up, and then they went down again. We had that yo-yo. Jalen Hurts did tremendous work in the offseason to improve his mechanics and his footwork, and they've been vastly improved. But I don't know. I think the old school days of just perfect structure are probably over.
Yeah, and I don't know how good Dak's mechanics are. I mean, that was probably the best game he ever played in his life, right? I mean, I don't think he's ever gone – what was he, 16 for 18 at halftime? He had the one interception, great play by Josh Sweat. But, I mean, that was probably the best game he's played in his career, I would guess. 350 plus.
He's had some good games. That's the Eagles' 10, Ed. Dak has had some really good games over the years. Now, he's faltered in big spots at times. So I get – the frustrating thing with me, if I were a Dallas supporter with Dak Prescott, is the situational stuff. Even at the end of that game, not understanding the situation, giving the Eagles an opportunity to come back, even though they faltered. You go back to the playoff game. I mean, how many games has this guy started in his career? And he doesn't understand the official has to place the football, has to spot the football. Remember when he ran down and he tried to spot the football himself? And it's still going to be desperation mode, but who knows if the Cowboys have that one more play against San Francisco, they can throw it in the end zone. Who knows? Kind of lost his head. That's my issue with Dak Prescott.
Yeah. There's some inaccurate passes I've seen him throw. His accuracy to me has never been, spot on. I don't think he's the most accurate quarterback, on a consistent basis. And, maybe that has to do with some of his mechanics, some of his footwork at times. But, that's kind of something.
He was accurate enough to complete 24 out of 24 against Eagles zone on Saturday. How's that for accuracy?
That's what I'm saying. I think it was the best game he's ever played in his career. I mean, whatever it was. I mean, it was obviously a game the Cowboys really wanted to win and needed to win. Playing against the backup quarterback, knowing that if they were to lose on their home field, the Eagles would be celebrating, the NFC East title, the first seed in the playoffs. And the Cowboys were really, they were up for that game. I think that was overall for the Cowboys probably, their best game of the year. And it was at a time when they really needed it. And they went out and it was a hard-fought game. I mean, they barely won that game, right? I mean, the Eagles gave them all they could handle with their backup quarterback. So, I see all the, these people complaining that now the 49ers are the number one in the power rankings and the Eagles have dropped to 4, again.
Who cares about power
exactly.
Rankings?
Power rankings mean very little to me, but, people follow that stuff. And, I just think there's an overreaction to the Eagles losing a game, only their second loss on Christmas Eve. They've went this whole season with only 2 losses up until Christmas Eve. Nobody, I don't think, saw that coming, really.
No. Don't turn it over 4 times. The Eagles are 13-0 when they don't turn it over 4 times. Don't turn it over 4 times. If you turn it over once or twice, you probably win that game.
And that's a concern. 7 turnovers now in 2 games. Jalen Hurts, pulled them out of the fire in Chicago. And Gardner Minshew couldn't do it with 4 turnovers against the Cowboys. So, 2 straight games with a fumble for Miles Sanders, concern, and the 7 turnovers. If they turn the ball over against the Saints on Sunday, if they're careless with the football again, they're not going to win.
And that Dak right now, number 2 in the NFL in completion percentage. So I'd say his completion percentage is pretty good. His accuracy is pretty good if he's number 2 in
Who's
the
number
NFL.
1? Who's number 1 on that list?
Geno Smith.
Baby.
Still number 1.
Is he still over 70%? That's 70%. An amazing story.
He's 70.7, and Dak is 69. So Dak is second, but Geno's still number 1. Less of a worry this week against the former Cowboy quarterback, the Red Rifle, who's coming to town for the Saints. How does Jonathan Gannon play him? If they've got all these different zones and zone concepts, and you don't quite understand, there are zones with man concepts that Nick Sirianni tried to do a cover job for Jonathan Gannon the day before after the Cowboys lost. What are they going to throw at the Red Rifle on Sunday, Ed?
Do you think they're calling him the Red Rifle in the meeting rooms?
Yeah.
You think that's how they're – okay, when the Red Rifle drops back with a 7-step drop, this is where we have to be. Yeah, I've never heard him called the Red Rifle.
Oh, yeah, early in his career. Yeah. And now he's called the Red Pop Gun. Yeah. But, Andy, I think people forget. Cincinnati, Marvin Lewis got a lot of crap for never winning a playoff game. But before Marvin Lewis, I think they had not made the playoffs since Ken Anderson, the Ken Anderson days. He was a heck of a quarterback, but and obviously took him to the Super Bowl. And I think he made 5 straight playoffs. Now they lost all the first rounds. Might have been 6. And he was a big part of that. He was a good quarterback earlier in his career. Now there's, a lot of Matt Ryan tint to him, and probably lesser. I don't understand what the Saints are doing. I mean, Jameis Winston is by no means great, but he's far more explosive, and there's far more. I don't get what they're doing, and they're just helping the Eagles. But this is a big game for them for this reason, Ed. Mickey Loomis got embarrassed by Howie Roseman. He did. He flat out did. And the Eagles' first-round pick is obviously they have 2 first-round picks. They have the Saints' first-round pick. Saints really, really want to win this game. In many ways, it might be their Super Bowl because he doesn't want to get embarrassed again. Do you buy any of that? That this is very important for that reason for the Saints.
For Mickey Loomis, I don't know. Do the players in the locker room really care that much about Mickey Loomis to say, "Hey,
That's
let's go
fair.
win one
That's
for
fair.
Mick"?
They might want to get him out of there.
Yeah, I don't know. Certainly, Mickey Loomis wants to win this game. He needs a quarterback. You mentioned, I mean, Dalton or
Well, he
Winston.
can't get one because he traded
Exactly right.
his potential top 10 pick.
And he gave up his second round pick to the Eagles in 2024. So, it's not a good look for the Saints to have a first round pick next year when they really could use one. So, I don't think that's really a motivation, but I believe the Saints are still kind of in the mix for the
They're still
for
in
the
it.
South Division Championship to get in the playoffs. So that to me is probably a bigger motivator for them. Sitting at 6-9, it looks like the team coming out of there is going to having a losing record. But if the Saints can win their last 2 games and check in with 8 wins, that might be enough to get them in the playoffs. I think that's the biggest motivator is they're still playing for, the right to keep their season alive.
Agreed, to make a playoff spot. What do you think the emotion is for that team? And I know you're not that. It's probably an unfair question. For this team playing for this coach. Dennis Allen was the DC, gets the gig when Sean Payton decides he's going to go to TV for a year. Seemed to be popular with all his defensive players. They liked him sticking around, but now he's in charge of the entire team. I got to believe his job is on the line this year as well. They're going to go out and win one for the old ball coach.
Well, yeah, here we go. Playing for your coach again. I guess, the defensive players like them. I mean, this is a top 10 defense. It's a very good defense that's really going to make the Eagles work for points, I think. That could be a bit of a motivator too, to go out and try to get Dennis into the playoffs his first year as a head coach. But you're right, his job could be in jeopardy if the Saints want to go, a one and done year. That doesn't seem like the Saints philosophy. They had Peyton there for so many years. But I don't know if his job is safe or not, but it would certainly be more secure if they find a way to win and make Mickey Loomis happy, because now their draft, they don't have to worry too much about that draft being a top 10 pick that they won't have. So yeah, there could be some of that to try to make Dennis feel a little bit more secure in his job.
So why do you think, because a lot of people talk about the Saints and say they have talent, and they do. If you look at them on paper, there's certain players you go, oh, that's a pretty good player. That's a pretty good player. But they don't win. They don't win games. They should, if you look at it on paper, at least from what happened in Tampa Bay, they should probably win that division from a talent perspective. So what do you think the disconnect is? Why do you think they're in desperation mode? Because not only do they have to win out to win that division, they would need a lot of help as well on top of it.
Yeah, that's for sure. I thought the Saints would be better, obviously, than they were. I wasn't sure they were still the best team in that division, but I thought they'd have more than 6 wins right now at this point in the season. The disconnect, I mean, I know they had some injuries, right? Every team has injuries, but I think they got hit early. Michael Thomas really was never a factor. I think they expected him to play this year. Chris Olave has been very good, but I think a lot of it just stems from the quarterback position.
Well, even, if you look at Pro Football, they think Andy Dalton's playing great.
Yeah. Again, Pro Football, I don't know what to make of Pro Football Focus. They had there was a Tyler Smith for the Cowboys not giving up a sack, and then there was a clip of Hassan Reddick
I think it was out of the pocket. I think that's what.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of Pro Football Focus anymore. But, I mean, Dalton is what he is. I mean, he's not a guy that's going to be real mobile. I mean, the Eagles have had 4 straight games of 6 sacks, 6+ sacks. And this looks like another opponent where they could really, pummel the quarterback because Dalton's not going to move very well.
Another 6-sack game.
It could be. I mean, they need one more to tie that record from 1989. I think it'll happen. But as far as the disconnect, I'm not real sure. I mean, I'm not, plugged into the New Orleans Saints, so I don't know why they're having this down year. Maybe it was the injuries. Maybe it's a new head coach. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's a team that's all on the same page together or is all playing for one another like we're seeing here with Philadelphia. Everybody plays for one another. Maybe that's not the case with the Saints. Maybe the chemistry is just bad.
I want to get your take on a call I got yesterday on WIP, which I dismissed at first, and then I gave a little bit more thought, and I said, it's a stretch, but it's not something that you can just not even consider. The guy was getting on Gannon's case saying, when they face a real top flight, franchise level quarterback, they still have problems. That last year, we know the games in a row that they had, the Derek Carrs, the Mahomes, the Herberts, all completed this unbelievable percentage of passes against Gannon's defense. And this past week, Dak did what he did. The only real high level, when I say high level, I'm talking top 10, not top 2 or 3, guy that they shut down was Kirk Cousins. And they did do that. You got to give him that much credit earlier in the year. My response was, this year's defense is different than last year's defense. With all the changes they made, going back to compare what Jonathan Gannon did against a top flight quarterback is irrelevant because it's a different defense this year than it was last year. Or is that a legit question that against a quote unquote Gannon defense, a really high level quarterback and a good completion percentage quarterback can give them fits? Is that fair?
Well, Dak certainly makes it look like a reasonable complaint to have. But, I'm trying to think of the quarterbacks. I mean, he played Aaron Rodgers. Now, Rodgers isn't having the same type of season, but he's still Aaron Rodgers.
He's coming on, man. They're going to make the
Right.
playoffs.
Seeing what he's done these last 3 games, he's gotten some help, and now he's got him, again on the doorstep to the playoffs. They still have to win out, and some other things have to go right. But, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, you could put him in that equation as well with Dak Prescott and these other top flight quarterbacks. I mean, Daniel Jones, I think, was having a good season when the Eagles played him. Is he known for being a high completion percentage guy or a top quarterback? Probably not. But yeah, I think on one hand you could say it's legitimate, but on the other, I just don't. You're right. It's a different defense. I think the Eagles have done good against or done well against every quarterback that they played this year, except for Dak in week 16. Even I guess Taylor Heineke with Washington, they did a good job controlling the ball in that game, 40 minutes of time of possession. I'm not sure how much Heineke had a hand in beating him. I mean, he did carve up the Eagles with Terry McLaurin. He made some good throws when he had to. But I think the Eagles will be fine against any top flight quarterback. But who's left? Who's a top flight quarterback left? I mean, you have Jones and Dalton.
They're on the AFC. That's why everybody thinks the AFC is better than the NFC. Look at the Pro Bowl quarterbacks in the NFC versus the AFC. Other than Jalen Hurts, who's had the MVP like year, then I think it was Kirk, it was Cousins, and Gino. And the AFC's got Mahomes and Josh Allen and Burrow, and I don't even think Herbert made it. No. Because of everybody else. The AFC has better quarterbacks. So you're going to see if the Eagles go where they want to go, ultimately you're going to see a great quarterback. But yeah, on the NFC side, Dak's probably the best. And ironically, Jody, I don't know your caller, but I'm assuming he was an Eagles fan. And I bet you would have said every day up to that game, Dak stinks, Dak stinks, Dak stinks. Then after the game, he said, well, they can't deal with a top-tier quarterback. Right. So, there's a little disingenuous tint to that, I guess. But from the defensive standpoint, and I'll end it here with you, at Kracz E on Twitter, SI.com/NFL/Eagles. You can read that there. I talked about Jody with this in the opening segment. Are the Eagles too complicated on defense when they bring in the Josiah Scotts and the Reed Blankenships of the world? Because they're playing all these zone coverages. And when you have blown coverages like the 3rd and 30, that's generally communication. To me, there's a difference between if Abonte's out there and CJ's out there. Do they need to scale it back and simplify things if players like Josiah Scott have to play and Reed Blankenship?
You could probably say that, sure. I mean, listen, your core principles are what they are at this point, though, right? 17 weeks into the season. I mean, you shouldn't have to scale back anything. You should have players that are in every single meeting room for the last, 4 or 5 months here, that they should understand what needs to be done. If you're a coach, you can say, well, I need to coach that. I have to make sure that player knows his responsibility with that call. I mean, some of it's on the player. In fact, I would say most of it's on the player. You have to understand, after 5 months of sitting in these meeting rooms and going out and practicing it, what you're supposed to do, no matter what the call is. So, I'm not sure simplifying it's the answer. I think this team needs to, find a way to refocus more than that. I mean, look at the turnovers. They're just not. Miles Sanders is just dropping the ball. I mean, these guys need to have focus, and same with the secondary. You should know, with very minimal amount of communication, exactly what you're supposed to do on every single call. So I don't think that they need to scale it back. I think the players need to get.
All right, I like it. Hard line, Ed Kracz. Hard line. I like it.
We'll see. We'll see how hard line goes. How hard line are Eagle fans going to be this weekend at the game, Ed? It's been 3 solid weeks. As John pointed out earlier, that Dallas game, 3rd of 3 straight road games. So Eagle fans haven't been able to get out there in December and stretch their lungs and back their team. How much of a home field advantage Eagles have this week?
Well, I think it's New Year's Day also, right? So you're going to have, you're going to have a pretty hardy crowd there.
Yeah, but I don't think they're going to the Mummers till afterwards. I don't think they'll go there, then come to the game. So it never stops them from liquefying their strength before the game starts, but I don't know that it ties directly to New Year's Day.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little scared there because it's going to be nice too, at least early.
60 degrees.
Week. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So people are going to be out, having maybe an extra drink or two. If it's 20 degrees, people want to get inside and they don't want to, I think it limits it a little bit. Boy, it's going to be a party atmosphere.
Yeah, and even more so because I think it's New Year's Eve. There's just going to be a whole lot of revelry going on, and it's been 3 weeks since they were able to, unload at an Eagles game. So it's going to be quite loud.
I might park today, Ed. Beat the traffic. Beat the traffic.
Probably not a bad idea, John. But yeah, I think it's going to be really raucous, as it always is. Maybe there'll be an extra layer to it because it's a New Year's Day game. And the fact they haven't played at home since December 4th, I think it was, against the Titans. So it's been a while. And I think we undersold that whole 3 games in a row thing. There wasn't a lot of talk about that in the locker room with the players. And that's our fault as the media. We just figured it'd be business as usual. But there are some challenges that go with playing 3 straight road games, 2 of those in the division. So yeah, that was a big factor too.
I thought it was an awful spot that on schedule day, Jody and I talked. I said that's a bad spot, but as you go through the season, I didn't know they were going to be 13-1. So you do fall into that lull of, well, this team's so good, it's not that big of a deal.
Yep.
It was a big deal.
It was a big deal. Exactly. All right, Eddie, I won't see you between now and New Year's. John will. He'll see you on Sunday. Yeah, both of you guys better get there early, so you're going to spend more time than you actually want to with McMullen. But he'll get a chance to wish you Happy New Year's.
More than 5 minutes is too much.
Well, as long as you don't spill any coffee on me, John, we'll be gold, buddy.
I will never live that down.
No incidents on Sunday other than the game itself. Eddie, thanks, buddy. We'll
Happy New Year, Jody.
We'll talk in 2023, all right?
Yes, sir. Talk to you next year.
That is Ed Kracz here with us on Birds 365. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. Sheil Kapadia of The Ringer and the Philly Special podcast is going to jump in right about 20 minutes from now. McMullen and McDonald back next here on Birds 365.
Postgame.